Have you ever felt like there's so much going on inside of you that you do not even know where to start? Like your thoughts are loud, like your emotions are heavy, your stress is constant. And even if you want peace or clarity or change, it feels like everything inside of you is still moving in too many directions at once. Well, I'll submit to you that I think this is where a lot of people live today. They're not just dealing with problems around them, they're dealing with chaos, the chaos within them. And this is why Genesis 1 gives me such a powerful, as well as a couple other scriptures, but Genesis 1 gives me such a powerful framework for clarity. And I'm not saying Genesis 1 was written merely as a psychology lesson. I'm not even saying that every symbol in the passage only means one thing. I'm saying it gives us a framework for understanding how order can emerge out of inner chaos. Genesis begins by saying, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And if I use that as a teaching framework for the inner life, I can think of the heavens like my head would be the heavens symbolically, and then my body would represent the earth. It's something like how our body comes from the earth and will once again return to the earth. So I can consider my body the earth and my head or my mind like the heavens, synonymous with the heavens. If I think of it that way, then the heavens would be like the inner world of thought, perspective, worldview, right? And what governs the way that I see life. Then I can think of the earth as the lived expression of that inner world through my body. So my choices, my emotions, my relationships, and the life I'm actually experiencing. So in other words, what is happening inwardly eventually shows up outwardly. Then the text says that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And that sounds like a lot of people internally to me in my clinical practice because there is a lot of potential, but no order. And there is emotion, but there's no clarity. And there's movement, but there's no direction. People are like doing, doing, doing. And I thought we were human beings, not human doings. You see, there's a deep inner world, but they do not yet know what is governing it. You see, then the text says, the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. Again, I'm using this as a framework. Throughout scripture, at least in Hebrew thought, water was is kind of synonymous with emotions. Water can carry different meanings depending on the context in whatever passage you're reading. But here, as a teaching picture for the inner life, I think it helps to see waters as the deep moving inner reality of a person, especially the emotional depth and inner turbulence they may be experiencing. So, side note here, remember the Lion King, where in the beginning, the Pride Lands were lush and green. Everything there seemed like a lot of order in the beginning. And then towards the end, when Simba returns, it was desolate, dark. That's how a lot of people look on the inside of them. It's desolate and dark because they haven't destroyed or taken out the scar in their life. So, what stands out to me is this: before there was order, there was hovering. Before there was clarity, there was presence. Whose presence? God's presence. Before there was light, there was a willingness to move over the deep. And I think that's powerful because a lot of people want change, right? Simba's out there akuna matata-ing it, but they do not want to hover over what is happening inside of them. In a sense, Simba ran from his problems because his problems told him to run. Scar told him to run. What is the scar inside of you that's telling you to run? Because people want relief without reflection. That's what akuna matata means. They want peace without presence. They want order without first understanding the chaos. But if I want clarity in my life, I have to learn how to slow down and hover over what is happening inside of me. I have to look honestly at my thoughts, my emotions, my interpretations, my fears, my agreements, my narratives, the meanings I have attached to what happened to me and what is happening around me. Because if I can't get beyond my stresses, my problems, and my pain, then I won't even be able to create a life of create a future beyond them where those things don't even exist. I'll keep recreating the same life from the same inner disorder. So immediately following God hovering over the waters, God says, "Let there be light." And that is the moment of clarity. That's the moment of illumination. That's the moment I begin to see what is actually governing me because I took the time to hover over the deep. What are my thoughts? Where did they come from? Who told me to think that way? Who told me to believe that way? And once there is light, now there can be order. And that is where I think many people get stuck because they're trying to create order without first getting the light. And they're trying to create change, or at least they're trying to change their behavior without even understanding what is driving the behavior. They are trying to manage symptoms without getting clarity about the source. And I think that's why the story of Jesus calming the storm becomes such a powerful companion picture, because Jesus rebuked the wind and he calmed the sea. Those are two different actions. He rebuked the wind because in the scriptures, you'll see some scriptures talking about every wind of doctrine. So what is culture telling? What is the world? It says, do not be conformed to this age or this world, the way of thinking, but be conformed by the renewing of your mind. He rebuked the wind. He rebuked the thoughts. He rebuked, because the wind is like, it's bringing everything. The wind, you see how the wind brings leaves. Sometimes the wind's so strong it could take a trampoline from one person's house and gift it to another person's house. That's what I mean by every wind of doctrine. Or that's why what I mean by he rebuked the wind and he told the seas to be calm, because it's like, I need to rebuke what I'm thinking, especially if it does not line up with what God says about me. And then I need to calm my emotions. But as a result of me rebuking the wind, reframing what I'm thinking, I'm going to be calm. Now, again, I'm using this as a teaching framework, and I'm not saying that every time you see wind in scripture, it means one thing, or every time you see water, it means one thing. I'm saying this gives us a powerful way to think about the inner life. So the wind can represent what is driving the disturbance. The sea can represent the turmoil that shows up in the emotional life of a person. So if there's a storm inside of me, one of the questions I need to ask myself is, what is the wind driving it? What thought is driving this? What fear is driving this? What belief is driving this? What interpretation is driving this? What lie am I agreeing with that is stirring up this internal storm? Because if I only focus on calming the sea, because I never address the wind, I may soothe myself for a moment without actually changing what keeps producing the storm in the first place. And this is where Philippians 4:8 becomes such a strong filter, because I can ask myself, is this thought true? Is it honorable? Is it just? Is it pure? Is it lovely? Is it even worthy of praise? And if it does not pass that test, then it should not be governing me. And if a thought rises up against what God says, then 2 Corinthians 10:5 gives me direction as well. I bring it into captivity. I cast it down. I do not let it build a stronghold in my mind. And then I answer it the way Jesus answered when he was in the wilderness. It is written. That's how I confront what is trying to govern me from the inside. That is how I defeat the scar in my life. You see what I'm saying? That is how I can count it all joy. It's the perspective, or my decision, my stance to count it all joy when I go through various trials and tribulations, because I know it's going to work for my good. It's going to cultivate patience and build my character. And this is how I stop letting the outside world instruct my inner world. This is how I stop being ruled by every storm that rises up in me. Because before I go out and start trying to correct everything around me, I need to make sure my own house is in order. My boundaries need to come from the best in me, not the storm in me, not the worst in me. And my voice needs to come from clarity, not chaos, not fear. My actions need to come from truth, not emotional flooding. My participation in the world needs to come from order, the order within, not confusion from within. Because remember, God is not an author. He's not the author of confusion. So when I look at Genesis 1, I see a pattern. Chaos is present. The deep is real. And another thing you can think about too is, I heard from Myron Golden that dysfunction follows intention. And I sat and thought about that for a second, because Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says, God created the heavens and the earth, and then I can stop there. And then the rest of it is how he did it. So he intentionally created, and then disruption followed it. Now, out of that, because anytime you think about it, anytime you make a conscious choice to do something, don't you You hear people say, every time I take a step forward, I get knocked back 2 steps. That's that disruption that's following. But we don't get discouraged. We bring order out of it because everything that we create creates a new problem. You see what I'm saying? And that's why all of our gifts make room for us in this world. We don't necessarily have to fight over positions in this world because when I create something, someone else can create something from I'm not going to call them problems, but from the consequences of what I created. So, for example, Henry Ford created the car, and now that opened the door up to car accidents. And then every business that comes into play when it comes into keeping cars safe, right? Airbags and sensors and different things like that. It put people to work. You see what I'm saying? So when I create something, when I give my gift to the world, I'm also giving an opportunity for people to follow my gift, support my gift, and serve just like I'm serving as well. You see what I'm saying? Chaos is present. When it's present, the deep is real. Okay? I need to hover over the deep. The answer is not panic. It's not avoidance. The answer is not surrender. The answer is not, it's to hover long enough until you get clarity, until there's light, until you can say, let there be light. And once there's light, order becomes possible. This is the framework. This is how clarity begins. This is how a person stops living from reaction and starts living from revelation. This is how a person stops being ruled by the storm and starts governing from what is happening within. This is how a different future begins from the inside out. I hope this blessed you today. Titans aren't born, they're forged.